Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. Okay, so the time has finally arrived. Apparently, I did not realize it's going to be happening today, but the Commander Bracket system, at least the beta version, has been unveiled. Let's jump into it. Let's talk about what this is if you missed all the stuff last year at the end of the year with the initial kind of bracket stuff and how that is, I will say, different than this is. I'll go through everything that I learned on the stream. I recommend checking out that stream as well, twitch.tv/magic, I believe. It's the most recent one. But also, I'll talk about my opinion on all this at the end of this. I'll try to reserve my opinion for the end of it, but I might not be able to. And then, actually, we're going to talk about some game changers as well, some cards that they highlighted. And I'll probably have to do a separate episode where I just kind of go all in on all of the game changers because there's like 40 cards or so to talk about why all of them are on that list and what the implications of that are. Let's jump into it, though. The Commander Brackets beta, we have 5 different, let's call them, like matchmaking system portions, right? We've got the Tier 1. Okay, Tier 1 is Exhibition. That's what the term for the Tier 1 is. In the description of it is your ultra casual commander deck. Now that has no mass land denial or extra turns. And when it comes to mass land denial, they did kind of like jump into what exactly they mean by that. It does mean and encompass like, mass land destruction as well as like not just land destruction, but like land bouncing as well. Like, so obviously Sunder, or obviously 2 cards like Winch Orb, and that is like, land denial in another way where it's like, okay, your resources don't untap. You can't utilize your resources. Or even like Blood Moon, which changes your resources to all, be mountains essentially. So anything that kind of messes with mana sources of your opponents to slow them down, that is what they mean by mass land denial. So yeah, kind of like stacksy pieces in that too. The second part of this is no 2-card infinite combos at all. Like literally, if you have a 2-card infinite combo, even if your commander just like, oh yeah, my commander, there's this one card that works really well with it. Oh gosh, what's the Sanguine Bond commander, right? Vigo or whatever that one is. And then also, Exquisite Blood. There you go. Like that kind of a combo. Yeah, even if your commander just happens to combo with one other card, or Godo and Helm of the Host. Yeah, no, you're automatically out of the ones. So whether you have a 2-card combo you just put in the deck, like, I don't know, like Demonic Consultation, that's Oracle. There you go. If you just have that in there, or, Dramatic Reversal, Iskron Scepter. Or, again, if it combos with your commander, yeah, if it's 2 cards, it's not exhibition level. It's not Tier 1. No game changers. And we will talk about what game changers are. Those are actually a list of cards that are not banned. I will say this right now for those of you that are panicking right now that heard about game changers, like, oh my gosh, they're not banned. We'll talk about the implications of them being on that list, though. But if you have any of those cards, I believe there's 40 of them, any of them in the deck, it is not a level 1. Also, few tutors. Now, what exactly does few tutors mean? I didn't hear them specify a number, but I think it's kind of one of those, like, you know it when you see it kind of things. Like, oh, if you've got, like, 10 tutors in the deck, yeah, that's probably not a level 1. Again, that obviously increases consistency, which kind of takes it out of the, ultra casual if you're increasing consistency. And when they say tutors, they don't mean like, oh, land tutors, like going and getting basic lands like with Rammer Growth. No, that doesn't count. They're talking about more so obviously like Demonic Tutor, that kind of a card where, oh, you go get any card out of your deck, you get your hand, or specifically like, you go get an insert or whatever. Those are still kind of, obviously tutors. So few tutors, let me know if you saw the stream as well and heard like the exact number that they mentioned. I did not hear a number mentioned. I would assume, like, to me, like, few tutors means, like, 3. Like, 3 to maybe 5 at the high end of, like, tutors when it comes to that. I would say, and again, not land tutors, but, like, hey, go get whatever card, kind of a tutor. That is kind of how I would approach it, but we'll see. They might have actually put, like, an actual number. Let me know in the comments below. Okay, next up, Tier 2. Core tier. The average current pre-constructed deck. That is the description for this one, which I find to be interesting because I think they've printed some game changers in there. We'll get to that in a second, though. Okay. No mass land denial at all. It doesn't mention no extra turns right there. That is the one thing that changed there, but it does mention no chaining extra turns. So if you just happen to have an extra turn card in there, I think the example that they gave was like, is it Stitch in Time? Like the coin flip card? Like, if you've got a coin flip deck, you probably throw in every single coin flip card you can. It just, one of them happens to give an extra turn, like if you flip the coin correctly, it doesn't automatically take you out of the core tier, all right? It takes you out of exhibition, because it is allowing an extra turn, but it doesn't take you out of core, because as long as you're not chaining extra turn after extra turn after extra turn, then sure, that is still core eligible. I guess, you'd probably say, like, if you have, not a lot of, like, copy effects for those extra turns, or if you only have, like, 1 or 2 extra turn spells in the deck, you're not really going to be chaining them together again and again and again. So that, I would assume, it doesn't say anything about, like, extra combats, but, like, I would assume, like, chaining extra combats infinitely, too, would be something as well. You could be like, I'm not doing extra turns, it's just extra combats. It's like, okay, it's kind of the same thing, if you're doing it infinitely. No 2-card infinite combos still is on there, though, for core. You cannot have any at all. And again, I do want to remind you, that does include if your commander just happens to have a 2-card combo. Like, oh, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, that one golem that works with Kenny. Okay, cool, that's a 2-card combo. That counts. No game changers again, though, which it's interesting, like, not even one game changer allowed in this, which is interesting. So if you've got any of those 40 cards that are listed in the game changers in your deck, it is automatically above a 2. Even if the rest of the deck is just miscellaneous, like Chair Tribal, but you include one card, this is where I shouldn't be, like, kind of commenting on the actual tiers. I need to give my thoughts at the end, but okay, yeah, basically, again, if you have any of the game changers, you are outside of 1 and 2. You are not in those tiers. And again, the few tutors, it doesn't specify that would increase at all. It's still probably the same amount-ish. So yeah, in my opinion, it'd be like 3 to 5 tutors is probably in that fine, I would assume. But again, if Wizards said something about that specifically, please let me know in the comments below on the specific numbers. I did not see one. Next up, upgraded tier. So this is the 3rd tier. Beyond the strength of an average pre-con deck. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about all that here in a second, but that's kind of like their kind of description of it, okay? Still, no mass land denial. So we are literally 3 tiers in. There are 5 tiers in total, and you cannot utilize any mass land denial cards. So literally, if you are using, again, Winter Orb, if you are using Armageddon, you are out of 1, 2, 3. You just cannot utilize those cards at all. So if you have any kind of Staxy effects, any kind of mass land destruction effects, land denial effects, you're out. And it comes to, like, when they say lands, it's like more like mana resources, I would say, most likely. But, I mean, not necessarily that. They do mean land specifically, but, like, no, like, Staxy, like, you can't untap anything effects either. Okay, no chaining extra turns is still on there. So, again, you can't just go turn after turn after turn after turn after turn and just, win the game from there. Now, something does get taken off here, and that is, yeah, no 2-card infinite combos. What is replacing it, though, is late game 2-card infinite combos. So, ones that would take a while to get to, and again, kind of like how exactly you define that, because, like, technically anything can be a late game combo if you just, like, hold it in your hand the whole time. You're like, well, I won't use it until later. Okay. Yeah, how late is late game? Like, turn 10, turn 8. Again, like, if you've got, like, turn 5, is that late game technically or no? Like, that is interesting because, again, that's like, okay, like, just kind of when you play it versus, like, what the combo is necessarily. This is kind of where, again, if they're going to go this far into it, they probably should have, like, a list of 2-card combos that are, like, 1 and 2 typically as examples, and then, like, a 3. Like, okay, if you have, like, sure, a 10 mana card, and an 8 mana card, and those 2 combo together, it's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, that's a 3 because that takes forever to play. But outside of that, like, again, you could technically just be like, okay, well, technically, I'm playing a tier 3 deck and not a turn 4 deck because, well, I waited until turn 8 to do my Dramatic Reversal Iskron Scepter. I did not play it before then, even though I had it the entire game. I played it on turn 8, so it is fine. Yeah, I don't know about that. Okay, and with this one, again, one other thing that did change is 3. 3 game changers, and no limit on the number of tutors. So, again, we have the list of 40 game changers. You can have 3 or less in tier 3. If you have 4, it's not tier 3, apparently. And we'll go through that list of cards quickly at some point, too, here in a little bit. But yeah, it does not have any tutor restrictions anymore. So if you've got tutors, and I will let you know that there are certain tutors that are on the game changers list. Not all of them, but there are certain really powerful tutors that are on that. So you would be limited in that fashion, but, like, just random tutors, yeah, you can use as many as you want. Go get as many tutors as you want, and it can still be within a tier 3 deck as long as you don't have, any early 2-card infinite combos, and you're not chaining extra turns, and you don't have mass land denial, okay? Moving on to number 4, tier 4 optimized. High power commander. It's time to go wild. No restrictions other than the ban list. Now, this is where I will kind of put my 2 cents in real quick, where it's like, immediately when it's also like, okay, what's the difference between this and CDH, because that's just, in my opinion, CDH. That's just CDH. And to kind of like throw things a little bit of a loop here, the fifth one is CDH, which in my opinion is the exact same thing as optimized, basically, just putting a different name on it. Okay, so CDH, let's go through that one quick. Tier 5 CDH. High power, they very competitive and metagame focused mindset. No restriction on the ban list. So yeah, metagame focused mindset, I guess, is like their distinction with that, but like I think you're just splitting hairs at a certain point when you're like between 4 and 5. Because technically, if you're going to say 1 to 4 is casual commander, like, or high power commander is basically, like, very high. The highest power commander is just CDH. That is what CDH is. Like, no restrictions, no hold bars, right? No holds barred. So basically, what's the difference? Again, you literally have, like, underneath both of them, you can put whatever you want, like, for the description of them, but, like, underneath both, it says the exact same thing. No restrictions other than the ban list. No restrictions other than the ban list. The exact same thing. If you're playing casual commander, I mean, the one difference between CDH and casual commander is like, okay, like rule 0, which basically includes no mass land denial. Like, that's just, in my opinion, again, I said I'd wait till the end of this, at least, to kind of put my 2 cents. With that, no mass land denial is just inherently, I think, part of, like, casual commander. Like, I can't see ever someone playing a casual game of commander like, oh, yeah, this is a casual game. Okay, Armageddon. Yep, this is casual. Well, hey, no, I'm not a 5, I'm a 4. Because I'm not playing with a metagame-focused mindset. Okay. Yeah, I don't know about that. So yeah, that is one distinction. And again, like they said, this is not finalized, right? This is not finalized. They wanted to get it out before, I think, the Command Fest Chicago, essentially, which is toward the end of this month. So they wanted to make sure they got this out ahead of time, because I'm sure they're going to have, like, the different pods. If you're at Command Fest Chicago, I'm sure they're going to have, like, here's the 1s, here's the 2s, here's the 3s, here's the 4s, here's the 5s. And this is where some of the problem kind of comes up with all this. But still, again, it's nice of them to try with this. We'll see how it all plays out. Okay, now, when it comes to, like, my full thoughts on this, I kind of already expressed them last year when they kind of put out, like, the initial idea, which this is a much better version than the last version that we had again, which was just, like, very haphazard and, like, okay, power and salt are completely different. What? No, you can't have separate scales. No, that makes no sense at all. Power and salt. I can't remember how exactly they labeled them, but yeah, they were like, yeah, Drannith Magistrate, the same thing as that. Okay. So, this is a good starting point. I will say that. It is something that can be iterated on. I'm glad they've said that. At the end of the day, though, I think that they're kind of on a fool's errand where it's kind of impossible to actually do this properly. It just really is. There's too many different factors to it. There's too many different opinions on all of this stuff to actually get it to actually work. Because here's the thing. Again, when you have, like, these descriptions, and it's nice to have the descriptions, right? Your ultra casual commander deck, the average current pre-constructed deck, beyond the strength of an average precon deck, high power commander, Sun to go wild, and then CDH. I understand where they're coming from with that, but, like, there are certain decks that I will not play anymore because they are absurdly powerful and absurdly obnoxious to play against. And my Artifact Storm deck, Joy River 1, is the one I always bring up for this. I did an episode on it where it's like the one deck I won't play anymore. Make sure you check that out at some point. But literally, like, that is very much a 1. That is very much a 1. That is a 1. There are no 2-card infinite combos in that deck. There are no game changers in that deck. It is I don't think I have any game changers in any of my decks because I play budget. And all those cards are expensive. So we'll get to them here in a second. But there's no mass land denial. There's no extra turns. Like, that is literally just... And there's definitely few tutors, if any tutors, in that deck. It is a deck, though, that is obnoxious to play against for the vast majority of Commander players that don't want to play against Artifact Storm. Like, that's just how it is. It is a deck that is much, 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 much more powerful than the average precon deck. It is probably, I guess, again, like, on a scale, before all this, it'd be like, okay, it's like a 7, 8, 9. Like, it's like an 8, probably. And again, it's like a $20 budget deck is what it started off as, right? And, obviously, the prices maybe increased since then, but I haven't updated it. But actually, it is a deck that, again, was built on the smallest of budgets, again, with no game changers, with no overly pushed cards, but it doesn't matter because the synergy is something that this does not take into account at all. This is taking into account with the game changers, like, okay, specific cards, which is nice, but again, it doesn't take into account necessarily synergies outside of, 2-card infinite combos or, an abundant amount of tutors too, okay? That being said, though, when you have a specific commander like Joyer that can just be an absurd draw engine for a strategy like that one, Yeah, again, okay, I could just technically, and I'm not going to do this, and I would not recommend anyone do this, but there are definitely going to be players who do it, and you know who you are, and please don't do it. Please don't do it. But yeah, there are definitely going to be players at Command Fest Chicago with the very first one of these. We're like, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, 4, 5. And everyone go to which one, your deck is supposed to be in. And everyone goes to there, but there's going to be players out there like, I'm going to go pub stomp 1 because I've got my deck that, yes, does not do any of these things again. No mass land extra turns, no 2-card infant combos, no game changers, and few tutors. But again, it's like Joy Artifact Storm or some deck like that, and it's going to pub stomp everyone else in that one because there are certain players who just want to be like, I proved a point. I'm really good at this number 1, and I won the 1 pod. Yay, I'm going to go win the 1 pod again. Don't do that. Okay, and that's kind of like the problem with this is like, I understand like the thought process behind it. I understand that in thought, it is a great thought experiment. It is a great thought to think like, okay, let's give something to simplify things for players to make it easier for players to match up. And I believe they said like, try when you're playing games, like basically when it comes to these tiers, like whatever your deck is, like play either up or down 1, but don't play up 2 or definitely not up 3. So essentially if you're exhibition, you can play like up with core. But if you're with core, you can play upgraded or down to exhibition. Or if you're upgraded up to optimized or down to core. Yes, but don't, like, if you're in exhibition, don't play CDH, obviously. Or if you're in exhibition, don't play optimized. It is an interesting concept. It really is. And again, I'm interested to see how it all plays out. And I hope I'm wrong on all this, but like I can't imagine that this is just going to work perfectly without any flaws. And again, like, yeah, they said that they are going to take like the feedback from the first one. And again, the final one's going to be in April. I don't think there ever can really be a final one that just like, oh, okay, yeah, this is exactly perfect now and it works 100% all the time. Like, that's just not how this works necessarily. Again, there's too many things in Magic. There's too many cards in Magic, too many scenarios in Magic that this cannot take into account, essentially. So, yeah, I hope that this works well. If you go to Command Fest Chicago and you play in one of these pods, please let me know how it all went. And again, I encourage everyone to be very respectful and don't just go try to pub stomp 1 because you can build a 1 deck that is basically a 4. Which, again, you definitely can. Like, you really can. Okay. Now, moving outside of this and just kind of the structure of it, let's get into those game changers and kind of what the implications of that are, because, yeah, they definitely said some things on that stream that I was like, oh, wow, okay, wow, they're going to be making some major changes. Okay, so the game changers, they put out a list, and they grouped them by different color identities, essentially, and they showed what kinds of cards are now on this quote-unquote game changers list. Again, like if you're in a 3, was it 3 and 4, you can have, or 3 you can have, up to 3. If you're in 1 and 2, you can have none of these. If you're in 4 and 5, which in my opinion are the exact same thing, you can't have, there's no restrictions on it at all. Okay. So, I mean, it's kind of like, I guess, Canadian Highlander away where there's like, the point system, but like different and not really at all like that. Okay, moving on. So, in white, the cards that were pointed out were Drannith Magistrate, Enlightened Tutor, Sarah's Sanctum, Smothering Tithe, and Trouble in Pairs. So these are cards that point out, like, out of all the cards in white, these are the ones outside the ban list cards that are technically game changers, and that are cards that not only now with this bracket system, again, if you have 4 of these cards, I mean, a combination of 4 of whatever these cards, you are automatically above a tier 3. You're automatically, your deck is a tier 4. Even if the rest of your deck is complete garbage, again, literally just like chair tribal, and then you're like, all right, but I also include Drannith Magistrate, Enlightened Tutor, Sarah's Sanctum, and Smothering Tithe for no reason, it's a 4. And again, that's kind of where the whole system kind of, in my opinion, just falls apart just a little bit, because again, it's not taking into account synergies, it's just taking into account raw power, but again, it's kind of just like, it's a fool's errand. It's kind of impossible to actually solve this as like, okay, we've got the perfect system. There is no perfect system, and I think that they will admit that basically, but like, this is the best try, and like, I commend them for trying. Okay. Again, with these game changers though, and before we move any further into that, one thing that they did mention though, is that basically, if any bans happen in the future, for the most part, almost always, the ban will be, well, from this list. So basically, again, like in the past, like with that massive banning that upset quite a few people, it kind of came out of nowhere for some people because, well, there wasn't really a watch list. Like some of the cards, like were expected to be banned, right? But some of the cards, like I guess like Jeweled Lotus was probably one of the ones that was like very unexpected. Like there was a difference between, just the cards that were banned and like people expecting certain ones, like Nadu. But then Jeweled Lotus getting banned at the same time was like, oh, okay, when was that talked about? Where Mana Crypt versus like Dockside had kind of been discussions of like, will it be banned, will it not be banned? The other two, Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus, it's like, oh, okay, that kind of came out of nowhere. This is kind of their, again, watch list, which in the past, the rules committee themselves had, I think they kind of just didn't have a watch list because they said that they didn't want like to impact things in that way, I guess. Wizards apparently is like, no, there's a watch list, which I personally think is a good thing. I think I've talked about a watch list before on this channel, but yeah, basically I think it's a good thing to have a watch list where it's like players, again, like if you know you're playing these cards, there is a percentage chance that the card gets banned. Like that's just like, instead of it just being a complete surprise out of nowhere, it's like, okay, these cards are on this, game changers list. They're clearly incredibly impactful cards. Will they get banned? I don't know, but like at least like you get a little bit of a heads up that like, hey, this is a list of incredibly powerful cards. Then you can only include a certain number in your deck if you want to be in a certain tier. But yeah, if they get banned, they get banned. Okay, moving on to blue, and blue has one of the most. Blue and black I think have the two most out of the colors though, but blue, not surprisingly, has a ton. Cyclonic Rift, Expropriate, Force of Will, Fierce Guardianship, Rhystic Study, Thassa's Oracle, Urza Lord High Artificer, Mystical Tutor, Jin-Gitaxias Kroger. Now, what you're seeing on here that you didn't see in white is, well, there are two commanders on this list too. So within the Game Changers, they actually put some commanders in there, which I find to be interesting and pretty fascinating that they did that, because now literally if you are building an Urza deck or a Jin-Gitaxias deck, you are automatically a 3. Automatically a 3. No matter what you put in the deck, it is automatically a 3 or higher because they're a game changer and it's your commander. It's in the deck. Therefore, yeah, you're above the 0 mark of game changers, so you can't be a 1 or a 2. Very interesting. But again, just looking through like this quick list, I guess I should have done this with white too, but we see like some stacks pieces with like Draft Magistrate essentially. I guess stacks, kind of like Hate Bear type effect, obviously an absurd effect. Obviously incredibly powerful tutors. Now all the tutors out there in Magic are not on this list. Like what's the Armory one? Like, oh yeah, go get an equipment. Like that's not on the list. But like Enlightened Tutor like is very, very good as a tutor. Obviously 1 mana, go get an artifact or enchantment essentially. Put on top of your deck, instant speed. Yeah, crazy, crazy effective, crazy, crazy good. So yeah, you see like, okay, specific tutors are on this. Absurd mana producing lands like Sarah's Sanctum is on this list. Green players out there, you probably know what else is coming up here in a little bit. Smothering Tithe, yes, is a game changer and an incredibly annoying card. Obviously an absurd mana producer. And then Trouble Pairs, card draw too. Okay, Cyclonic Rift, one of the best removal spells of all time. Obviously on this list, Expropriate. We do see that this one is an extra turn spell that does make the list. Obviously, all the extra turn spells do not make this list. Expropriate does because it's like extra turn plus steal things, and just basically, it's hard not to win a game if you cast that card. Force of Will, Fierce Guardianship, free counter spells, Rhystic Study, card draw. Again, I'm going to do an episode where I talk about these in detail, but that's Oracle, very famous combo card, obviously, very hard to stop. And then, yeah, Urza, one of the most powerful commanders of all time. Mystical Tutor, again, like Enlightened Tutor, incredibly powerful tutor. Jin-Gitaxias, obnoxious commander to play against. That's very powerful and obnoxious, like free counter spells and stuff. Okay, moving on. Oh, there we go. Oops, hit a different button. All right, black. Bolster Citadel, Demonic Tutor, Imperial Seal, Opposition Agent, Tergrid, God of Salt. Yeah, you made that list. Of course you did. Vampiric Tutor, and Ad Nauseam. So, again, we see like absurd value with Bolster Citadel, Demonic Tutor, again, Vim, Imperial Seal, Vampiric Tutor, all absurdly great tutors, obviously. Opposition Agent shuts things down, like a Hate Bear type effect, basically. Tergrid, one of the saltiest commanders of all time, and very powerful on this list, too. So, again, if you have a Tergrid deck, it's automatically a 3. So, if you don't want to play against Tergrid, go to the 1-2 pods, I guess. And then Ad Nauseam, just absurd card draw. So, yeah, that's an interesting one that I didn't expect necessarily to see this on the list, but it's on the list. Okay. Next up, red, Jessica's Will. Poor red. Okay, so again, like if you want to see like what cards are like really used in Commander a lot, like you just like look at the color disparity kind of here. Except green gets not necessarily a lot of focus on this too, but like red gets 2 cards. Blue is like 10. So there you go. All right. Jessica's Will, Underworld Breach. So Jessica's Will is, absurdly quick, like just bursty mana, and also like card advantage if your commander's out. Underworld Breach, this is more like the you really don't see Underworld Breach, like, ever in casual, in my opinion. You just don't. So, like, it's just a very powerful, like, CDH type style card. So, like, yeah, usually don't see that necessarily in casual necessarily. Moving on. Green. Green gets with only 3 cards, interestingly enough. Survival of the Fittest, Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, Gaia's Cradle. You could definitely argue for other ones. Like, again, literally, white and blue have, like, their, 1 mana tutors, okay? Actually, and red does too. Or, sorry, red doesn't. Black does too. But green, Vampiric Tutor, Enlightened Tutor, Mystical Tutor, and, no Worldly Tutor. Interesting. So, yeah, going and getting a creature on the top of your deck apparently is not, worthy of getting in the Game Changers list. Interesting. So yeah, there definitely could be other cards in green, I would assume, that should be able to make this, but apparently not these. Survival of the Fittest, yeah, creatures, oh my goodness. Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, yeah, again, like, kind of like the no mass land denial kind of thing, essentially, and that's just basically what Vorinclex does. Doubles up your mana and mass land denies your opponents. Gaia's Cradle, absurd card. Yeah, just absurd mana ramp from a land, basically. Next up, multicolor, here we go, and this is all commanders. Kinnan, Bonder, Prodigy, absurdly powerful commander. Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, very quick, gets around commander attacks. Winota, Joiner Forces, cheats into play so many things. And Grand Arbiter, Augustin IV, is a meanie. Yeah, basically just a stacks piece in the command zone. So yes, these are 4 that were highlighted. Interestingly enough, again, like there's other commanders that probably could be highlighted up there too that they didn't put up there and that are multicolor. Like, surprised Kenny's not up there, but yeah, apparently if you got a Kenrith deck, it can be a 1 or 2. So there you go. Yeah, Kenny. Okay, so yeah, there are certain commanders, again, that probably, again, once we get to, like, April, I'm not going to be surprised, again, if this list is much larger. Again, it is going to be larger, number 1, because I think I actually forgot to say this, too, but, like, in their Game Changer discussion, they did mention that there will be no bans when they make that late April change to the actual brackets and the Game Changers, but they will be actually unbanning things. I'm pretty sure that they actually said they are going to be unbanning things. So I think that there's probably going to be a mass unbanned at some point. I probably should do an episode where I talk about what cards might make this list. Kind of that we get, like, what their game changers are. We can probably, like, look to see, like, what's on the ban list that they could just be like, well, it's a game changer, so just, it's a game changer. So if you, like, don't want to play with it, play in a 1 or 2. If you are okay with just a couple game changers, in a 3. If you're okay with anything, 4, which is basically CDH. Anyways. Yeah, so these commanders are on the list right now, but I would assume that more are going to get added to it as things go on, but again, I could be wrong. Next up, though, colorless. So we've got Ancient Tomb, Chrome Mox, the One Ring, Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, Trinisphere, Grim Monolith, Lion's Eye Diamond, Mox Diamond, Mana Vault, Glacial Chasm. That's kind of funny that Glacial Chasm's on there. Okay. So Ancient Tomb and Chrome Mox, obviously, like, very quick mana. One Ring, absurd card draw engine that also protects you, and it's obnoxious, and they probably should never printed it. The Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, yeah, that's just like denial base. Or does Tabernacle? Nah, that's library. Tabernacle is, yeah, like people to pay, like, to keep creatures in play, right? So kind of like Staxy. Trinisphere, Staxy as well. Basically, everything costs 3, I think, right? Grim Monolith, yeah, that is just absurd ramp, like, very quick. Lion's Eye Diamond, yes, combo piece and also absurdly quick mana. Mox Diamond, again, any of the Moxes basically just quick mana. Mana Vault, quick mana, obviously, and then Glacial Chasm, a land that prevents you from taking damage. So that's just like, what thing doesn't belong here? Glacial Chasm. Interesting. Okay, so this is the full list. Again, I think there's 40. I think I counted, but I think there should be right around 40 cards on this list right now. So again, if you literally just, like, you look at your decks these days right now, first of all, if you have any of those commanders as your commander, again, I think you got Urza, Jin-Gitaxias, Turgrid, God of Salt, Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, Kinnan, Yuriko, Winota, and Grand Arbiter. If you have any of those as your commander, congratulations, your deck is automatically a 3 or higher, just no matter what. If you have 4 of these cards in any of your decks, just 4, I mean, in each of your decks, if you have 4 cards in a deck, I should say, that's on this list, your deck is automatically a 4 or higher. Which, again, is kind of, in my opinion, just, does taking out, like, 1 card out of your deck, like, okay, like, oh, well, the rest of my deck's, like, fine for, like, the other things in 3, so, like, if I just take out, like, Imperial Seal out of my deck, then all of a sudden, and replace it with, like, a worse tutor, then all of a sudden it's a 3 instead of a 4, that's kind of where, like, the semantics of all this kind of, come into play, where it's, again, nice in thought, nice in, the actual kind of initiative behind it, like the, okay, we can make a difference with this, but also, again, in practice, it's muddier than all this. So it is interesting to see kind of like this Game Changers list and to kind of see what happens to these cards. Again, in the long run, like, do people get scared off of maybe buying into some of these cards, especially the really expensive ones? Because at some point, again, you have now a watch list of cards that you shouldn't necessarily be surprised altogether if they gets banned. Like, again, they've kind of told you that, like, they're not necessarily saying that they're going to ban cards, but if a card does get banned, they're not just going to skip, like, the Game Changers list and go to, like, something else outside of the Game Changers list. I think the example that they gave, though, was, like, more like with Nadu, where, like, if a new card gets printed and they're like, whoopsie, didn't mean to do that, then maybe it wouldn't be like, okay, we put in the Game Changers, then we ban it. No, it'd be like, okay, they would just ban it. So that'd be, like, the only scenario, but, like, anything outside of these 40 cards and the cards that are already banned, like, don't be surprised if, you know, obviously one of these ends up getting banned. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens to these prices. Like, yeah, do they go down because are players afraid that they'll actually, you know, get a ban, essentially? So we shall see. So I'm going to do an episode at some point where I kind of go through in detail all these things and kind of, maybe I'll try to group them essentially. Like, okay, why are these cards in here? Why, you know, why are these certain commanders in here? But yeah, overall, like, it's interesting to talk about. It's an interesting thing in practice, and it's something that you, for most playgroups out there, like, this is something that you're just kind of probably going to joke around with your friends about. Be like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. And that's actually what I do with my friends. I'm like, huh, you guys have been losing to ones this entire time because all my decks, again, have no Game Changers because they're too expensive, and I don't have 2-card combos in my decks typically. And, yeah, I don't have an excessive amount of tutors, so you're losing to ones, so I need to pull Joyra back out. And no, I'm not going to pull Joyra back out. I'm not going to be doing that. Which is a 1 technically, but again, is definitely not below a precon, most definitely well above a precon, and yeah, I won't play that deck anymore because it's obnoxious. But yeah, so basically, where are we at with all this? Well, we're going to have to see kind of, you know, what the opinion of the public is at a certain point, kind of how this goes at Command Fest. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of, you know, feedback from it. And then also kind of where we're at in late April when, again, this gets solidified. And I guess they also said one other thing, too, that was interesting, that Scryfall, EDH Rec, Moxfield, I think some others like Architect are all going to be on board with like making adjustments to their platforms essentially, where like they'll be having like these cards that are game changers like flagged, I guess, as well, and it'll say it's a game changer, or that like, you know, if you build a deck on Moxfield, like it'll tell you if it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. Or I guess technically not like a 5. Like again, like how do you distinguish like 4 or 5 then? Like at that point, because like, well, the metagame is this. Are you playing this commander? I guess that might be it. But basically, again, those platforms will have that like on there. So like as you're building a deck, like you can say like, oh, it's a 1 or it's a 2 or it's a 3. So I guess again, the big vision of all this is like, okay, like if I'm going to Command Fest, I can just pull out my, you know, Moxfield list of decks and essentially say, okay, these are my decks right here. You can see that they have these tiers on them essentially with what they are. And then you play from there. But again, I think that just like it tries to oversimplify things just a bit too much, because again, you're going to get someone who brings out the Joyra deck and is like, well, it's a 1. All right, here we go. Watch me play for 40 minutes without extra turns. It's just storming. So it's fine. Yeah, it's funny that I didn't mention Storm on there. But yeah, okay. Overall, at the end of the day, it's interesting. Interesting discussions to be had. Comment below with your thoughts on all this, and comment with what you think about the Game Changers. So yeah, and expect an episode on the Game Changers in the near future as well. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.